Like I discussed in the previous episode, Jesper Bratt is here for a long period of time as he recently signed an 8-year extension with the Devils organization. I had the chance to speak with both him and Tom Fitzgerald in their recent media availability, ask them some questions about the contract itself and what the future looks like for the Devils organization. And I also have another update about Timo Meier. We have a lot to talk about in today's episode, Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Elliott scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credentialed media member, Trey Matthews. It's a great day when Jesper Bratt has signed his lengthy extension with the Devils organization, but it's an even better day when you had the chance to ask him a few questions about the matter. So we'll talk about that a little later in the episode. I had the chance to attend the media availability for both Tom Fitzgerald and Jesper Bratt. Had the chance once again to ask Bratt a couple questions. I also asked Fitzgerald a couple questions about the pending offseason for the Devils because free agency is set to begin on July 1st. Obviously, the entry draft is just a few weeks away. And is that first round draft pick still on the table? Like I said, we'll discuss that a little later in the episode. But let's start off with another bit of news that sort of got swept under the rug in midst of the Bratt extension. And that is Timo Meier and his contract update. So it was recently revealed that the Devils had filed a team-elected arbitration for Timo Meier. Now, I get it. When you hear the word arbitration, it sets some alarms in your head and you get some PTSD because you can't help but think and go back to last season in which Bratt was just moments away from his arbitration hearing. Luckily, both sides were able to agree upon a 1-year extension. Bratt was also eligible to sign his extension on January 1st. Obviously, that didn't come into fruition. And now going into the offseason, there were a lot of questions in regard to Bratt and his future with the organization. Was his rights going to be traded away? Would he resign long-term? Would he resign short-term? What was the asking price going to be? And like I said in the previous episode, that hard part of the offseason is now over. And now people don't want that same story to repeat for Timo Meier because obviously worst case scenario for the Devils is that Meier will become an unrestricted free agent come next season. So I'm here to debunk any negative thoughts you might have in regard to the arbitration and Timo Meier. So here's my initial reaction to the matter, which is this just gives the Devils more time to negotiate on a contract extension because arbitration hearings don't occur, as you might know, until late July and early August. So what the Devils are just doing is buying themselves some time. Now, here's the thing, and this is also interesting. I was actually talking with a fellow associate of mine about the money situation, which is Meier is eligible to accept a qualifying offer of $10 million. But now since the Devils have filed that arbitration, that number goes from $10 million to $8.5 million. So worst case scenario, like I said, Devils will own Timo Meier's rights for one more season. But instead of giving him $10 million annually this year, you only have to pay him $8.5 million. And that just surpasses the Jack Hughes threshold, but it's under the Dougie Hamilton threshold. Now, what would happen if that qualifying offer is accepted? Well, it would be the same situation for Jesper Bratt, a little bit different because Bratt was an RFA, but for Meier's case is that he won't be able to re-sign to an extension with the Devils organization until January 1st, 2024. And if a deal can't get worked out in that amount of time, then he'll become a UFA on July 1st, 2024, that same offseason. So once again, that is a situation that I'm sure Tom Fitzgerald is trying to steer clear from. But during his media availability, Fitzgerald was rather confident that a deal is going to get worked out with Meier and his camp. And he even said that Meier wants to remain with the Devils organization. I'll play that soundbite momentarily, but first, let's go over what Kevin Weeks was also reporting. In regard to Meier's tenure at the San Jose Sharks organization, he said that it was rumored that the Sharks front office did in fact offer Meier $9 million plus annually to get him to sign an extension. However, it wasn't going to come into fruition, and they ultimately had to part ways with Timo. Now, a lot of people are worried, like, what is Timo going to demand? We've been seeing a lot of rumors just circling around, especially on NHL Network. They're saying, can the Devils re-sign him to $8 million, $8.5 million, $9 million, maybe even $10 million, wherever the case might be. We're seeing those rumors circulate a little bit, and people are starting to make their own assumptions. Well, here's my thing. I think Meier wants to win. I don't think he wanted to be a part of the Sharks organization because obviously they're about to go, or they're already going through a rebuild. And I think Meier wanted to utilize his skill set somewhere else and try to help a team that was destined to make a deep push in the playoffs. And lo and behold, that's why he's on the Devils roster. Now, Fitzgerald also said this during his media availability, in which he said that in regard to Jesper, it's something I've been talking about on the show. How do you get both sides to agree on a deal financially? Because Fitzgerald was also saying that he had to just bring up the fact that, look, there's other players that need contracts too, so you need to play ball in a sort of sense. And I think he's giving the same lecture to Timo, and I don't think Timo wants out of the Devils organization anytime soon. I shut down those rumors a few weeks ago when I was breaking down his exit interview. Obviously, he didn't give any clear indication that he wanted to stay with the Devils organization, but he wasn't giving anything that was rather alarming in the process as well. He seemed very mutual about it, and I think he had nothing but nice things to say about the Devils organization. So just putting that out there, and like I said, I think a deal will get done, and I think the circumstance for the Sharks organization and also the Devils organization is a little bit different, and I think Meier wants to win because if he wanted to get paid, if he wanted to get all that money, he would have remained with the Sharks organization, and it's something I've talked about back in December. But the fact of the matter is this: the circumstances are different. He's in a winning situation. He has a chance to be a big X factor for this team going forward. And here's what Fitzgerald said during his recent media availability in regard to Timo Meier and the process of trying to get him extended.
Timo's agent, Claude Lemieux, and I have been in constant communication and working through proposals. And Timo knows. I spoke to him yesterday. He knows how much we want to continue this relationship long term. And he's reiterated that to me. This is where he wants to be. He sees himself as a Devil and asked his agent to negotiate an 8-year deal with us, long-term deal, and it's music to my ear. So we'll continue to kind of chip away at it, but the goal is to have Timo Meier in a Devils uniform for the next 8 years.
So Fitzgerald is aiming for an 8-year extension with Meier. I don't know how much money he'll be paid, but like I've been saying the past few episodes, I am willing to surpass that Jack Hughes threshold for Meier's sake, because a player of his caliber, a player of his skill set, a player of his potential doesn't come around often. And I think in this case, the Devils were given a gift. So I think they need to utilize that gift the best way they can, because with Meier, you get that physicality, you get that toughness, and he's also capable of scoring goals and racking up the points. And he was able to help the Devils power play in a sense, because when Meier first joined the Devils organization, they were a pretty mediocre power play unit. They were like 18th in the entire league. And then come the end of the season, they ranked 13th. And I think Meier had a huge X factor in that as well. Obviously, I've given my thoughts on as to how he contributed during the playoffs. So I think a deal will get done. I don't think anyone has to worry about the word arbitration and Timo Meier. And worst case scenario is that he just re-signs for a 1-year extension and the Devils own that right for the 2023-2024 season. And we're just going to have to see what happens. Obviously, you don't want him to go to unrestricted free agency, but you would still have him around for at least one more season. And who knows how well the Devils will do during the course of this regular season. Okay, so let's first break down Tom Fitzgerald's recent media availability and a few questions I asked him. So, like I said at the beginning of the episode, I said that during his exit interview, Tom Fitzgerald did hint at the fact that maybe the Devils could get a first-round draft pick in this year's NHL draft, because obviously they used their more recent first-round draft pick to get Timo Meier. So they're going to have to find some diamonds in the rough if they want any chance of success in the draft. Not putting it past them. Obviously, they have a history of doing so. But I was curious to hear his thought process going the rest of the offseason, because obviously this free agency class is not all that good. And the trade market, it doesn't really work into the favor of the Devils because they have a lot of players signed long-term. Obviously, their goal is to re-sign Timo Meier long-term. And other than that, I'd say someone like Yegor Sharangovich and his rights and Mackenzie Blackwood and his rights, you might be able to get something, but not a lot. But I was curious to hear what Fitzgerald had to say in regard to the pending offseason for the Devils when the draft rolls around and also July 1st rolls around. Here's what he told me. I'm curious to hear your mindset for the rest of the offseason, because a few weeks ago you hinted at the fact that maybe you guys could pursue a first-round draft pick. And obviously now you got Jesper Bratt signed long-term. You talked about Timo Meier. So I'm given how the free agent market is, the trade market is, wherever the case might be, I just want to hear your thoughts on, like, what's your approach for the rest of this offseason?
Well, the checklist is concentrated on our own players. You know, again, there's UFA or 2 or 3 that we will continue to talk to their agents and see if it makes sense to bring back. As far as Timo is concerned, I said it earlier in the conversation that our goal hasn't swayed at all. It's to ink his name onto a contract that keeps him here for the next 8 years, and it's music to my ears and the organization's ears that he said the same thing back to us, which is great. So that's our goal. There's no time frame with that. As far as the draft, yes, I did say, yeah, you never know, right? You never know. Now that Jesper Bratt signed, that's one asset that potentially could have gotten me a first round pick, but we're not there. The draft's funny. You build up one day, next thing you know, you get a call, and next thing you know, so a team makes you start thinking about something differently. But like I said, I'm worried about today. I got a checklist today, Friday, the 16th of June, to really go through. And first and foremost, is concentrating on our own players and trying to keep players here that continue to help us win.
Aha! What's something I've been saying the last few weeks? I said when Fitzgerald said that he was interested in getting a first-round draft pick, I said the only outcome that I see of that happening is that if Jesper Bratt and his rights are traded away in some sort of package deal. And I said that I think that was Fitzgerald's way of saying, like, look, Bratt, and to also his agent, his camp, whatever the case might be, saying circumstances are different this year, and I have no problem dealing you away for a first-round draft pick or some player that can make an impact right away. We talked about Mitch Marner. We talked about William Nylander. We talked about Clayton Keller. We talked about Alex DeBrincat. We talked about a few other players that could potentially make their way to the New Jersey Devils roster if Bratt and his rights were traded away in some sort of package deal, maybe with Damon Severson add to the mix as well. Because I said it in the previous episode, I said that the chances of the Devils getting a first-round draft pick after re-signing Jesper Bratt are pretty slim to none. I think it negates it in total, just because who would you trade to get that first-round draft pick? Because when looking at their UFAs, when looking at their RFAs, obviously they were big contributors on the Devils roster, but no team is going to be willing to give you their first-round draft pick for those said players who are set to become unrestricted free agents or restricted free agents, because those are not the players you build your team around. Those are players that you add to your roster to try to get some contribution to maybe take your team to the next level. So an example I gave was Ryan Graves. Ryan Graves is set to become a UFA, but Graves is not the best defenseman, but he's far from worse. And obviously his plus minus is always good. His defensive point share is good. He led the Devils in blocks this season. So Graves is always an impactful player, but do you think a team would be willing to trade away their first-round draft pick for his rights? That doesn't really make much sense. So when looking at the first-round draft pick, I was theorizing it on this show. I said the only possible outcome that I see of that happening is if Jesper Bratt and his rights are traded away in some sort of package deal. So that was actually kind of cool that Fitzgerald kind of confirmed my thoughts. Obviously, he more of alluded to it than confirmed it, but I get where he was going in that sort of sense. And then when looking at free agency and trades, he also mentioned the fact that the main priority is to retain some of the players that the Devils already have on their roster. So one of those players is obviously Eric Haula. You got to try to retain him, who is a UFA. Then you got to retain Michael McLeod, Nathan Bastian, very impactful players. and their production kind of goes under the radar, but you need those guys on your roster. So when looking at this offseason for the Devils, my prediction is that it's going to be somewhat of a bland offseason for the Devils, and that's not always a bad thing. And I think the Devils are right now in a good position to try to take their organization to the next level, but you don't have to make a splashy deal, in the words of Alan Kreda when he appeared on this show months ago, because at the end of the day, the Devils know what's best for them. They already found a system that works best for them. So why would you break that up? Why would you run the risk of potentially performing worse in order to like maybe get that splashy deal, wherever the case might be? Now, I'm not saying the Devils won't make a move. They're obviously going to have to replace some productivity here and there, but obviously on the defensive side of things, I talked about some of the players that could see their roles increase. And then Tom Fitzgerald also said during his recent media availability that you can look at someone, maybe Nolan Foote, getting a chance to try to earn his spot on the roster. And that's another player that a lot of people have been talking about. You can look at players like Gritziuk, Holtz, or whatever the case might be. There's a lot of young guns in the pipeline that are set to take bigger roles. And quite honestly, I don't see any reason why to doubt them in the first place. So this free agency, this trade market, it's not going to be good for the Devils, and that's not a bad thing. I prefer them to run it back with the team that they had last year because it was such a historical season. So why stop now? You found that system, you found that group, you found what works best for you. So no reason to do any drastic changes. And I agree with Fitzgerald, which was, I think the only player that could have been traded away for a first-round draft pick, hypothetically, was Jesper Bratt, maybe Damon Severson in some sort of package deal. But the fact that Severson couldn't get him a first-round draft pick, and I said that Severson was one of the more highly sought-after players in such a weak free agency, really speaks volume as to how this free agency class is going to be. So just putting that out there. So I think the Devils are fine for the time being. Obviously, last offseason was a lot more fun because I made speculations for Kevin Fiala, Alex DeBrincat, Johnny Goodrow, Matthew Tkachuk. Obviously, some players that can have an impact right away on this roster. But the Devils made a splash at the trade deadline. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think the Devils should 100% run it back come next year. Now, I asked Tom Fitzgerald, and he actually asked me to clarify a little bit more. But I asked him, what's the goal of this team now? Because last year's team was historic. And I guess the mindset I was trying to get at is that obviously the expectations are going to be high. And what would be considered a disappointment? Like, does this team want to win the Stanley Cup come next year? Are they ready for it? Or can they make a deeper playoff run? Obviously, you can't use the excuse saying lack of playoff experience because now most of the players on the roster have some sort of playoff experience under their belt. So I asked him, what's the expectation going forward? Here's what he told me. Now that you got your young core re-signed for the long term, I want to hear some of the short-term goals you have for this team within the next year or so.
Yeah, as far as what personnel,
how much further do you think this team can go now that you have that young core set for the long-term future? I just want to hear how far do you think this team can go come next year, the year after, now that they have that playoff experience under their belt, they've gotten better, they've taken strides in their game. I just want to hear your thoughts on the matter.
Well, I think I said this at my year-end press conference that the standard has been set, expectations have been set, and now it's go time. Are we going to be a 112-point team again? Well, that's pretty hard to do. Our goal is to play the best hockey we possibly can play for 82 games, get in the playoffs, and then push to win a Stanley Cup like everybody else. As we continue to mature as a group, as we continue to potentially add to the group, the most important thing is watching the core grow, develop. Now, and I said this, 3 years ago, we got some good kids. It's time to add some men to our lineup. We added some men to our lineup, but now we're watching our kids turn into men, and that's exciting.
3 words right there. It's go time. How will they fare come next year? I really don't know. But now that you have your young core re-signed for the long haul, I think the Devils can see a lot of short-term success. Now, what's going to happen come 2030? We don't need to worry about that because Now we can focus on the present moment. And it's something I brought up with Jesper Bratt and his thought process, but I'm liking where the Devils are going right now. And like I said, no need to make any splashy moves. No need to break the band up. Obviously, you're going to have to part ways with a few players, particularly maybe like Ryan Graves. Yegor Sharangovich's name has been brought up in the mix a couple times, but the ultimate goal for the Devils in my eyes is that they have the fourth best odds, according to FanDuel, to win the Stanley Cup in 2024. Can they do it? I don't really know because the roster is not fully constructed for the time being, but they're heading in the right direction. And obviously, expectations are going to be higher. Teams are going to be gunning for them. But now you're able to see what works, whose skill set can be utilized in what sort of circumstance, and then just go from there. So I think for Fitzgerald, he's an absolute genius as to how he's been constructing this team, finding those diamonds in the rough, but at the same time, not being afraid to go for the stars and get someone like Timo Meier added to your roster. So this Devils team has a lot of upside, has a lot of potential, and it's way too early for me to be making predictions at this point. But I think this team can see a lot of short-term success, and it's going to help in the long haul, because if you're able to have that short-term success, all eyeballs are going to be on New Jersey, and maybe this could be the start of a new dynasty. But obviously, they're going to have to win a couple times in order for that to happen. So they're at like step one, which is be a consistent playoff team. And probably it's in their best interest to win a Stanley Cup here and there, maybe back-to-back, similar to what FanDuel was predicting. But we'll talk about that when that time comes. Love that answer from Fitzgerald, and glad he asked me to clarify on it so that way I could get that specific answer. Now, before we continue with today's show, I want to tell you guys about Game Time, because obviously I know the Devil season is months away, but you need those cheap tickets for any event that's happening at the Prudential Center. So forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price if you find tickets in the same section and row for less. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Get images of your seat right before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And now, let me tell you guys about Bird Dog. So Bird Dog's stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of stiff, restricting cotton. Bird Dogs fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khakis, but stretches so that way you get a slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Bird Dogs uses anti-stink, sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. And that's a major plus for me because I'm in Arizona. It's hot right now. It's 100+ degree weather, but I still need to look good. I still need to look cool, and my legs need some breathing room. So Bird Dogs is just perfect for me in that case. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take off your Bird Dogs, we promise you, once you receive them. Okay, let's talk about the main event, and that is Jesper Bratt and his return to the organization. Now, I know a lot of people had their opinions on Jesper Bratt. Particularly, I've had my opinions on him as well. Obviously, he's a certified point getter. He was able to come off back-to-back seasons in which he was able to get 73 points. And the last player to get 70-plus points in back-to-back years in a Devils uniform was Zach Parise over 10 years ago. So I want people to remember this about Bratt, which is, yes, he did not have a good playoff showing, but at the same time, he still has a lot of upside. Now, I asked Bratt about some of the things he wants to work on and what his ultimate goal is with the team come next year. Here's what he told me. You talked briefly about the playoffs. However, you're coming off back-to-back seasons in which you were able to get 73 points. Obviously, you're now locked up for a long period of time. So I want to hear some of your goals so that way you can strive for that consistent production that I know you hope to expect yourself out of.
Yeah, I think I'm just going into the offseason the same way, and with even more motivation this year than previous years. I feel like obviously we as a team and me as an individual had a good season, but I still feel like we have a lot of more gears as a team, and I have a lot of more gears as an individual. So I see the same thing that I'm far away from done, and I know that I have a lot of things that I can improve and make myself a better player, and that's what I'm working on a daily basis to show myself and show the rest of the league that how good I am and how high of a level I can take that to. So I'm just very excited to continue that journey, and together with the team and all the individuals in the team, that we can all strive for a lot more.
What is your ultimate goal from your personal perspective? Because like I said, you were able to put up 73 points in back-to-back seasons. Playoffs didn't go as planned, but obviously there'll be other opportunities. I just want to hear the goals that you've set for yourself.
You obviously help the team even more to win games than last year. I think points and all that stuff that will come by hard work, by details, and by a lot of commitment in the summer. That way you'll help the team to grow together, and I also very much believe that personal success will come from the team success. So the only goal I have now is to go to fight for that cup and to continue the journey that we began last year, and that's the only motivation and the only goal that I've set right now.
My way too early thing that I want Bratt to work on, because obviously we're months away from the season. Free agency hasn't begun. The draft hasn't begun. So I'm definitely going to revisit this topic. But since I had the chance to speak with Bratt, here's the thing I want Bratt to work on, which is more consistency, and try to add something else to your game. Try to be a little bit more aggressive out there without being a bonehead. Because the one thing I want to see from Bratt is that if your scoring is not there, what else are you doing to try to contribute to the team? Because obviously, if Hughes and his scoring is not there, he's using his speed to his advantage to try to penetrate deep into the offensive end. If Nico Hischier and his scoring is not there, he's playing defense. If Timo Meier and his scoring is not there, he's being physical. And I could go on and on for the rest of the people on the roster. Obviously, some are better at it than others. But for Bratt, we saw this during the playoffs, which is scoring's not there. He's not really doing much. So the one thing I could say about Bratt is that like his production is replaceable. But at the same time, I don't want that to be the case for him. I don't want him to be a one-dimensional type of player. He needs to add a little bit more to his game. And I also asked him, does signing this extension, because it was the third time in the past 4 seasons in which he did not have a deal lined up for next year. I know you guys are getting tired of that fact, but just have to share it. I asked him, does the pressure sort of alleviate, and can he focus more on hockey and less about the off-ice distractions? Here's what he had to tell me. You've been having these contract discussions before about signing long-term. Now that it's officially coming to fruition, does it sort of alleviate the pressure? And now you can put solely the focus into just trying to see how much further you can take the organization with your play skill?
Yeah, obviously it's very, very exciting. Obviously, I'm very happy with the decision, and I do think that throughout all the negotiation, this was the right path to go, and in the end of the day, we ended up where we wanted to be. And even if I signed a 2-year contract and a 1-year contract in the past, this was always the main goal. It was never a intention of not trusting the process in New Jersey or something like that. It was always a way for us to get to this long-term deal, and for the both sides to agree on it. And so I'm very happy that the way everything went, and together with my agent to really set this plan and to trust this plan, that we ended up at this area where we wanted to be, and where I get the chance to really grow together with this team and build something extremely successful over time. And that was just in the place that I wanted to be, and this is the place I want to win too.
Similar to what I said in the previous episode, hard part is over. The drama is over. The speculation is over. The what if scenarios are over. Silly season discussion in my end for possible Jesper Bratt trade discussions are now over. So Jesper Bratt can fully focus on hockey. And how much longer can he keep up this productivity of putting up 70 or plus points? I really don't know. But the one thing I said in the previous episode is that Jesper and his best years are right ahead of him now. How long before he hits his prime? How long before, if this is his prime, how long before his prime ends? What's his skill set going to be like for the team towards the end of his contract? I really don't know. But what I do know is that he has good momentum going his way. And like I said in the previous episode, is it a bit of an overpay? You could say that, but I think the ultimate goal was to keep Bratt's annual deal under Jack Hughes' threshold. And so that way Tom Fitzgerald could surpass the Hughes threshold when Meier is ready to sign his extension. So once again, guys, Timo Meier will be in a Devil sweater come next year, more likely than not. I don't know for how long. I don't know if it's going to be a 1 year for the qualifying offer, but Fitzgerald seemed very confident. And he also said that Meier wants to remain with the organization. As for Fitzgerald himself, when it comes to the offseason, simple is better. You don't need to get a first-round draft pick. It's not all that necessary. We're not rebuilding anymore. And for Bratt and his future with the team, he's here to stay, guys. And he definitely was able to have a successful regular season. And the playoffs were a bit of a struggle, but let's face it, it was his first time in the playoffs. And I'm sure a lot of his teammates can vouch for him and say that they didn't step up their games either. So it's the same example I use for Vitek Vanecek. A lot of you haven't given up on Vanecek, but he was horrendous in the playoffs. But yet Bratt had a pretty good season, and he was horrendous in the playoffs. Why do you give some more leeway towards Vanecek? That's what I'm curious to hear. So if you want to answer that, leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. But also, what are your thoughts going into the rest of the offseason for the Devils? And also, what do you think about Jesper Bratt and some of the answers he provided? Because he knows the playoffs were a bit of a struggle, but I was trying to cheer him up and say, you're coming off of back-to-back years. What are some other ways you can provide to the organization to keep your stride going? So let me know what you guys thought about the answers from Fitzgerald and Bratt. Once again, leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on a podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal Twitter page at TreyMatt4 or the show's Twitter page at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. So continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening once again.